easy to be enthusiastic for the first 6 months, easy to be enthusiastic in your first week. But what happens when you're not receiving that P&L confirmation? What happens when your parents, your other half, your spouse is questioning what you're doing in your career? And that's showing up. You then create this positive momentum for potential luck, understanding patterns, how you interface with the market. Your ability to evaluate yourself becomes much more powerful, because when you have a structured approach daily that you're honoring on a consistent basis, you then can start seeing the patterns within yourself and the market. When it's fragmented, it's very difficult to see where you're going wrong. At his year-end P&L for 2024, and you see his activity in trading, and he's traded on every single hour of a 24-hour clock. And the moment they receive friction in their job, in their career, and trading, you receive friction consistently. People don't know how to deal with that this year. You won't see gaps in the 24-hour period. So he's traded, whatever opportunity has come, whatever time of the day, he'll wake himself up, he'll create alerts, and he'll be there.
So, Alex, we're back again, and today, obviously, very festive. We had a great conversation on the last podcast, and I think all the viewers really enjoyed that format. So it's good to kind of carry it on with Rudolph over here. And it's Christmas week. It's been a very kind of unwinding week, but also quite a busy week with, of course, central banks, which is what we're going to kind of go into. But it'll be rude not to start with the Christmas party that just passed.
Yes.
Right? So,
and I mean, striking. I just love the Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. I'm reading it to my child every night. He's looking at the Christmas books that we have to read every evening. And yes, we had our Christmas party on the weekend. There was obviously a very big one in London. Many more traders. We have a nice, cozy group here in Cyprus. So it's a lot more intimate. For our Christmas party. Yeah,
exactly. And I mean, it's good to kind of have some downtime between all the traders. Obviously, it's been a bit of a year, especially with Trump elections and everything that we went over on the last video and the last conversation. But it's nice to kind of like have that kind of unwinding moment. And of course, everyone gets sort of relaxed and have a personal setting, and everyone can kind of just sort of have a beer, have a drink, and kind of be relaxed with each other. And it's really good for the grads as well, because the grads get to kind of sit with the seniors and the elite traders and get to kind of talk shop in a more relaxed setting, right? And actually, I think we can start off with that, because one of the things that I did ask the grads this week was, what did they learn, other than, of course, how we can unwind on a Saturday night, but what did they learn from the senior traders, right? They've got their opportunity to sit with these guys. Of course, Monday to Friday, there's a lot of times where it's hard to kind of, get the traders on the side, because they're, of course, as we said, chained to their desks from the last video. And it was good to kind of hear one of the most important lessons that they heard, and the discussions that we're having, was showing up, right? Just showing up. So can you elaborate on that conversation?
I think it was asked, we have a couple of new traders who have started with us. And one of the things, so we have these two junior traders who are now, they're becoming less junior. One of the junior traders had a 70K week approximately 2 weeks ago. And he had that 70K week as a result of showing up for the years that preceded to that moment. And what does showing up mean? And this is what we're challenging the junior traders, is the markets, and you interfacing with the markets on a consistent basis, daily, doing your debrief, doing your prep sessions, reviewing your game against what the floor was performing, understanding where you're going wrong, where the skill deficiencies are, but doing that on a consistent basis, day in, day out, even after 6 months of not receiving any positive P&L feedback. And almost you have to have this cultish type of belief that there will be that moment that come, and it's easier to have that cultish belief when there are traders within your facility that are making money, that are doing well. So you can almost see that biblical figure, instead of it being a mirage, and it's this hopeful mirage. So that's showing up, and the reason why one of the the traders who's now been with us for a couple of years mentioned that, because during his journey, We've had it in Cyprus, we have it in London, we have it in all our offices. There are junior traders that fall by the wayside. They come enthusiastic. It's easy to be enthusiastic for the first 6 months, easy to be enthusiastic in your first week. But what happens when you're not receiving that P&L confirmation? What happens when your parents, your other half, your spouse is questioning what you're doing in your career? And that showing up, you then create this positive momentum for potential luck, understanding patterns, how you interface with the market. Your ability to evaluate yourself becomes much more powerful, because when you have a structured approach daily that you're honoring on a consistent basis, you then can start seeing the patterns within yourself and the market. When it's fragmented, it's very difficult to see where you're going wrong. Mm-hmm. So so that showing up is the most important quality for a trader, and that was kind of the theme of the Christmas party. Like I know everyone was going to show up at the Christmas party because there was some free food and drinks.
Yeah.
But yeah,
that's always a good selling point.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, look, exactly, and I think when I first started here, I remember I was kind of giving myself I'm going to be here by 9:15, and I kind of sort of stuck to a strict schedule. But I very quickly learned that schedule changes depending on what's going on, what is the theme. You might have, for example, a BOJ event that could be in the middle of the night, and you're going to come in for it, and because of that, you might need to give yourself a bit more time. We actually did a video on that, which we can link at the top right corner of the screen, which was about sleep. If you remember, I had some issues with sleep, and giving yourself that time to recuperate, because you need the cognitive ability and everything else. Or more recently, which we're going to go into, of course, the China stuff that was going on, knowing that, maybe by 7:30, 8 o'clock, you need to be at your desk because it happened on a Monday. Then if that's in theme, keep that consistent, because you don't know when it will keep coming. So yeah, I think it's so important with that showing up, but also how you show up and being flexible with that as well. Obviously, having a schedule is important, but also being quite flexible with it, right?
That's it. And showing up for the opportunity set is what you're describing. Yeah. Showing up for, if the opportunity set is concentrated at 6 a.m. your time till 8 o'clock in the morning, because that's where the markets are moving, because there's some theme that's generating that's out of Asia. That's when you're showing up. So it's almost like showing up for the opportunity sets. Is potentially more more. But it does not mean that the opportunity set's finished by 8. You're still there as a professional, because a large part of the best opportunities are also dynamic opportunities. And in our Bahamas high performance retreat, we spoke about those dynamic opportunities that catch the market by surprise. Your ability to act with violent action, to take that initiative whilst others are cautious, is the person. Our top traders take that extreme initiative when those opportunities present themselves, when others just need to think a couple more seconds longer. And thinking that couple of seconds longer is going to cost you a lot of money.
Yeah, excellent. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to getting onto that Bahamas part as well. Yes. We've got a whole bit on that. But let's keep to the red theme. So this is Christmas, Santa, ho ho ho, and all of that. Of course, it's a red Christmas, but it's also been a bit red on in the markets, and we've had a red day, for example, here in the office. And again, the point of these conversations is being frank, being transparent. We've had, we had quite a few traders on the Monday where the first China comment did hit, able to capitalize on that. But then we obviously saw complexity that came along with it throughout the week. So can we just kind of talk about that briefly, how certain traders in London, I'm kind of jumping the gun a little bit here, so apologies. But like for me, one of my responsibilities here as well is keeping, being in touch with the risk team. In London, there's 6, 7 of us, there, and obviously talking with compliance. We get to see it, and we get to see, the traders, how they're doing and how they're reacting. But more importantly, how may they react if they did miss an opportunity? So could we kind of
I mean, just to throw back on you that if you can just those weekly risk meetings, I know a lot longer. The structure of those weekly risk meetings, what's the focus there? I'm on the front of house, the performance side. You're as well. You do both. You're on the risk, you're on the performance. You take the whole spectrum. But on those weekly risk meetings, what are the general focus? And I think because we don't discuss this, so I think it's a great a platform to discuss. From a professional training group, what are you doing in those weekly risk meetings? What are the topics? What are the agenda items usually?
Cool. So I mean, mainly it's of course looking at what's coming up in the week. If we've got any kind of events that we definitely need to be, I mean, we're always around. There's always at least 4 or 5 risk managers looking at the screen at all times. I mean, one of the big things for AXIA is when the traders are live, we have a risk team, and I think that's so important. When I went live as well, was to know you've got a support around you. In all aspects. So one of the things, of course, that we do talk about is if we've seen some good performers, how they performed. Obviously, as well, some traders who might not have performed particularly well. We want to keep an eye on them. And again, sticking to the theme of what we're talking about with the China comment, of course, it being very early in the morning, that first China comment that came out last Monday, we're quite fortunate because we're a couple of hours ahead. In London, we had, so we had some traders already here on the floor already. Some guys in London missed the opportunity because it was so early in the morning and it was, not a scheduled drop. And because we had, our meetings we have are on Tuesday, and we're discussing it, and we're saying, okay, well, we had that week, it was CPI, I believe. We were kind of saying, right, some guys are, of course, frustrated where they missed that opportunity. How are they going to act? How are they instinctively going to trade? Are they going to trade differently? Is the behavior going to change? And it's those kind of things that we look out for, and make sure that if we do see somebody, going that way in that direction,
potentially tilting.
Yeah, potentially tilting, basically. Then we can get involved, and we can message them and reach out to them. And a couple of people we might look at and go, okay, they've missed that opportunity. They might not be particularly happy with it. Let's see how they kind of go through the week. And I think those kind of meetings are very important, because having a risk team like that, and people have that preconceived notion of trading is a very lonely game, and at times can be. But to know that actually you do have a team behind you in that sense can potentially save you.
Well, I mean, it's like you mentioned, I think one of the important aspects of how the risk team has been structured and organized is also to be those, those touch points, those little reminders, that there's someone there, and if you're feeling in a potentially emotionally dark place, that you can hit up with, one of the guys. You might have a better relationship with one of the risk managers than you do have, with another one. So it's almost have that, diversity within the risk team of characters that that you can just offload how you're feeling. And I mean this, talking about that, it wasn't a significant bloodbath on the floor. Like maybe a couple of traders risked a little bit more than they did. But I think if we rewind what actually happened during that week, and also what goes on inside the mind of a trader, because when you're rocking up day in, day out, you're committing, you're showing up. You're a trader that's become profitable, and there's China's moving the markets, and there's all this policy intervention, all this chatter. Now, China is rather complex in the way they release information. They, a lot of time unscheduled. They're very different to the other G7 country, or the other, the European Central Bank, the Fed, the BOE, Bank of Canada, even RBA, RBNZ. Bank of Japan is a little bit more distorted when they release their information. So it seems like when you start veering out to the east, the structure of the release of information is a bit different. And so, but our traders, they volatility hunters. And so they will look and source the opportunities where the opportunities are at. And so what happened during that week is, and it's a trifactor. There were 3 opportunities that week with regards to China. The first 2 were opportunistic, the third one was not. Now, if you missed the first one and the second one, because they were released early, a little bit unscheduled, maybe a little bit outside of your domain of operation. Now, if some of the traders came in a little bit extra early, they created that opportunity set. There was a video on our blueprint for one of our senior traders who had his best day, made approximately up until that stage was his best day, approximately $140,000 on a Bank of Japan at the beginning of the year, where he knew that Bank of Japan was in play for the next couple of weeks, so he came in a little bit earlier. But what happens, and what is that feeling when you've worked long days, you've been committed, you miss Monday, the opportunity, because it's just outside of your operational time. You miss Tuesday. All of a sudden, there's news coming out, and we're seeing, what is going to be this response from China, this policy response. And so that third day, which was happening on the same day of the European Central Bank, in the morning, everyone's eyes is glued on this response. Everyone's watching for this opportunity. And then you're there. You have at the back of your, I've got to take this opportunity. So you're not segmenting the opportunity set where Monday was a high opportunity set because the price factor was large. But as the week moves on, with any theme, you get peak theme, you get the theme starts tailing off, and you can get within these micro theme structures and these macro theme structures, such as COVID, such as the Russia-Ukraine crisis at the beginning, such as Brexit, such as Frexit, such as European debt crisis. You have all of these themes that have their own cycle, their own theme starting, peak theme, opportunity. And what happens is the best traders, they get aggressively and violently aggressive at the start of a theme that's generating volatility and opportunity. They don't need to wait for too much input information because it's a surprise factor that they can unleash their size. Whereas a trader who's a little bit more novice, a little bit more insecure in his game, usually has to wait for the opportunity sets to give him more and more confirmation before he starts sizing up. So he starts sizing up on the wrong side of the bull distribution instead of start sizing up at the beginning. And being convicted. So what happened that week is, as a trader, you've missed that Monday. You maybe heard a couple of the traders who have maybe done well and made some money. So what is that like? You have to be some impenetrable monk or an impenetrable force, not for that to influence you and for that not to affect you. And so how do you decompartmentalize? How do you move on from that and just say, that, and especially imagine what form you bring into it. If you're on a bad run, and all of a sudden, your psychological elements can magnify whatever your self-talk is at that moment. You've come from bad run. This is a so-called very big opportunity that you've missed. A couple of other traders have made money. You start feeding yourself with all these self-talking ghosts, these things that aren't going to service you. They're going to create all this energy leak. Because if your mind starts focusing on brutally massacring your identity, you all of a sudden start becoming blind to opportunity that could come up in the next 5 minutes, the next hour, and you get lost. So your ability to acknowledge the space, because we just acknowledge that space and move on. So that week was fascinating because the majority of traders missed that Monday, I think Wednesday opportunity. So two opportunities. A couple of the we had, a junior trader do very well. The senior trader, make multiple six figures. So this could be playing on the heads of other traders. Yeah. So what do you do to position yourself in the whole realm of opportunity is always there in some form over a year, over a lifetime, over a career. So deciphering the wood from the trees. And then when that moment came on Thursday, and I talk about, the three strikes and out. When there's people making money, only a few people. And then the next event, only a few people make money. And the third event, everyone's eyes are plugged in. Usually that one doesn't work out. Yeah, it's just almost this game theory, this reaching the end of the opportunity life cycle. That all of a sudden in that moment, when everyone is plugged in, the market does not go in the direction that you anticipate. And there's an actual exceptional opportunity on the other side, being aware of that. I challenged quite a few of the traders who came on the second floor, challenged the junior traders. That's what we call, this work that we did with Angus Fletcher in Bahamas. That ability to observe that exceptional information that nobody else is looking at. And how do you structure trades around that? So that was, for me, fascinating. It started off great in the week, and then one day, and I'm always, from a trading performance perspective, as a training coach, I'm always fascinated by the days that they don't happen too often, but the days when we lose, when 75% of our traders lose money on a trade, on like a mass trade that I find those are the huge learning opportunities.
Yeah.
And the ones who do debrief that, really go and reflect upon it, strip down the week, the sequence of the week, what led to that moment, those traders actually move on handsomely in their careers.
Yeah, yeah. And this goes exactly to what we were saying on that last video a couple of weeks ago, where it's all the work, it's all the debrief, it's all the reflection. When such an event like this does happen, because it doesn't happen every day, to be very in tune with it, to be very thorough, to map it all out, to not just your trading, but also just the environment and the narrative. And when it does come again, you're so much better prepared for it. And I'm finding it really fascinating as well, from the psychology point of view, and how certain people are reacting to it, and certain people, for example, it happened on the Monday. Well, for the more experienced guys, well, they know, they go, well, I'm going to be there early. I'm going to wait because this opportunity can come again. And then you've got the other traders that, are coming in at 9:30 and whatnot, still taking it easy, or, 7:30 UK, whatever it is. And then they miss it again. And at that point, it's just like,
well, that's the part you can control, right? Well, like once event is, and I know you challenged, the junior traders, like, if there's something in play and theme, and you're having conversations with the senior traders, rock up for that. Important. But like when that, going back to when there's blood and guts on the floor.
Yeah.
And you have to sense it. You can smell it.
Yeah.
And when there's that blood and guts on the floor, it's those, for me, if every junior, the main message, every junior trader, take the huge learning out of that. And how do you go about taking the big learning? Is actually sequence the whole week, what led up to that moment, because every moment is a function of something that precedes it. It's a linking of actions, the cause and effect. And, the best traders know how to link cause and effect, which is actually part of which we might speak about later, our narrative intelligence, which is very separate from, the other part of our brain, which is all logic structure. But what humans excel compared to AI is our ability to think in story and think in narrative. So our top traders are great at linking cause and effect.
Yeah, yeah. And speaking of top traders, of course, there was a bit of blood on that day, but there was one trader in particular that did pretty well.
Leading up to that week, a couple of traders, we had a junior trader approximately make almost 6 figures in 2 days because he showed up. Yeah. He knew that there was a theme, and he told himself, I'm going to be there 6 a.m. UK time for the next 2 weeks. So he created that luck, and he created that opportunity. I know, going into the end of the year, Bank of Japan sometimes operates a little bit early in December. They could release some. So just important of how you create that, you're creating your own luck. And then from a senior trader perspective, it's just, one of the senior traders, he organizes his entire workspace and life, whether he's got an alert in his toilet or whether it's in his kitchen and he's cooking, that if something is happening, he receives a notification, he can run to his room if he's away from his desk in the office. So he's organized his ability to trade 24 hours, and his sheer emotion of his fear of missing out overcomes his exhaustion.
Yeah.
There's actually, I was looking at his year-end P&L for 2024, and you see his activity in trading, and he's traded on every single hour of a 24-hour clock this year. You won't see gaps in the 24-hour period. So he's traded, whatever opportunity has come, whatever time of the day, he'll wake himself up, he'll create alerts, and he'll be there. Now, we have another incredible, 8-figure plus trader he won't sacrifice his sleep because he knows what that influences to him. And we spoke about, in that your video on sleep on our YouTube channel. So he has a structured routine because he knows what sleep, how important it is to him, but he's still committed during his operation hours, and he's consistent.
Yeah. And that goes to show that everyone has their particular strengths and almost kind of like styles, if I'm right, in terms of how they approach it. But again, going back to the beginning, to not sound like a broken record, is showing up, and that's what it all comes down to.
Yeah, and even on just the last point of our kind of Red Christmas or blood on the training floor that we had that day is what's also phenomenal and incredible. If you rewind back to 2004 when I entered the industry, up until around 2013, 14, majority of traders were one market specialist. Yeah. I was either a Bund trader, I was either a Eurostock trader, I was either a DAX trader. Maybe they breached into 3 markets, at the most. Fast forward that to like 2016, the start of AXIA Futures, is these traders are now these volatility hunters, and they're no longer these one market specialists. They're holistic traders, and they look where opportunity. Now you do need to start somewhere. You start in one market to understand the price ladder, the DOM, how the volume profile interacts with creating these opportunities for you. But as you move on in your career, is your ability to step out and seeing, well, where's the volatility spectrum and where the effort to reward ratio is optimized. And that's what's been incredible. So when I see the traders getting upset that they missed China, it shows that you want the traders to be upset that they missed it.
Yeah.
Because when they show that they're upset, it means something to them.
Yeah.
Their performance means something to them. But what we don't want to hold back against is if you're upset that you missed it and you don't create the mechanism and the routine to put yourself in a position the next time around to take that opportunity, well then you're being upset for no sake. And upset with an action is where the transformation and the compounding of the skill happens.
Yeah. Great. Cool. So I think, since we kind of left off of, one of the traders, or a few of the traders, multiple 6 figures as well in that week, I want to kind of move on to another section now, which is growing as a trader. As you become a bigger trader, more profitable, and you got more size, and your P&L gets bigger. There's conversation about a particular trader we'll talk about, and I want to just kind of talk about his journey, or let's just say a journey of a trader as they grow. The consistency, what are they doing to do that? How are they drawing out on their account? Could we kind of just go through that journey curve?
Absolutely. So I had this wonderful discussion with one of our elite traders, a serial 8-figure a year trader. And we're discussing, because he had a few conversations with a few traders, and he backs one of our traders here in Cyprus. And he had been having many close conversations with him. And we're speaking about getting big as a trader. And and if we start from ground zero, first is acquiring your skill sets. First is having game time, just game time, showing up, having the game time in front of your screens, seeing how you interface with the market, understanding your tools, understanding your workspace, learning from your ecosystem. And then you go live on your trading account. You've proved that, now it's time to go live. You lose money in the beginning. And then it's the goal is survival, is to be able to give enough game time, survive, not get stopped out, and get back in black. And so when you get back in black, and there's a whole journey that you riddle mentally during that. And that's why, when you have the traders that we have it on our floor, I always talk about there's been 1,000 ghosts before them. I could have even said that in the last video, so excuse me if I'm repeating myself. But that journey, and it's so riddled, it's so challenging. And when you arrive that you're back in black, you're starting to make money. Now for the first time, you can make a little money, and then you hit another hurdle where you kind of, every time you hit 20K, maybe the environment shifts, you're always hitting this resistance wall on your P&L. Your P&L curve looks like a chart in a market. You want to eventually get it to that explosive AI type of boom equity curve, which happens later, and provided you're learning and acquiring the new skills. Then there's this part where, I made a bit of money, you're up between 20 to 50K on account, and you are wanting to draw some money, but you're trying to keep your account balance high. You have a bad week, all of a sudden you can have a 50K go down to 20K in the space of a week. Your desk fees come out because you're still not making enough money at that rate where your costs don't really matter. And you take a draw, there's a split on the draw, then you have your tax that comes out of the end, and you feel like, freaking hell, I've worked all of this to earn less minimum wage. Yeah. And so you're having to deal with that psychology. Now, you've made it up, but you haven't really made it yet. The hardest part is getting to that 100K. Now, where I've seen most of the explosion, when a trader eventually gets to 100K on his account, I can see traders, it could take him 3-4 years to get to 100K. You know, say, you know, I'm pressing on that kind of more outlier. And then all of a sudden, it can take them 3 to 6 months to make $1 million. And it just goes, the slope of the curve changes drastically. But along that entire journey, there's multiple moments where you're questioning about your game. Now, the other part is, what we're having a discussion is, well, how do you go from being a 7-figure-a-year trader to an 8-figure-a-year trader? And there's actually sometimes a huge shift. Now, depending on the opportunity set, you can have the same skill set in a 2007 financial crisis market, and with the same skill set, you can make 8 figures. But say in a usual year that has 3 months of volatility, the rest of the year, low volatility, you really have to be a sniper, look for your opportunity set, is in that typical type of year, to move from a 7-figure to an 8-figure trader is almost like completely evolving yourself. Because what you're trying to also do is capture different types of liquidity. But when you're trading more size, liquidity starts becoming an issue. So those trades where you'd be able to get in and out, where you can make 5, 10K, 15K a day, but now to start making that 6-figure a day, 250,000 a day, those bigger trades, how do you go about creating almost a new way of how long you hold the trade? You know, before you might have entered aggressively in and exit quickly out, and you capture that high alpha first 1 minute. But now trades that you're looking to work, you know, 10 minutes, half an hour, because you want to offload more liquidity. So the other part that we're speaking about is, so he's been mentoring, you know, as junior trader of like, how are you going to get to 7 figures now? You know, you've proved you can make over $250,000 a year. How are you going to get to 7 figures? How are you going to breach these new boundaries? And one of the other parts he mentioned is, don't have a reductive cost mindset. So a lot of traders sometimes start thinking, how do I reduce my costs? How do I reduce my, you know, I don't want to take on this news feed at Bloomberg, or I don't want, you know, I want to go from a TT platform to another lower price platform, instead of thinking, how am I going to get bigger? You know, I actually mentioned this in a tweet. The best way, you know, when a junior trader came to me and said, Alex, how am I going to, how can I reduce my costs to make more profits? I said, the best way to reduce your costs is increase your performance. You know, because eventually costs don't become anything once you start, you know, reaching a certain scale. But he noticed that very few traders, you know, well, many traders have this cost reductive mindset, and so the focus is in the wrong direction. And the other aspect is that ability, as a trader who's trying to now increase size, is your ability to accept that you're going to take a hit. Mm-hmm. So one of my junior traders on the desk has increased his size. He's doubled overnight. Okay, his mentor, 8-figure trader, said, "You're going to be doubling your size now." Now, with that, doesn't mean that you're going to be doubling your performance, okay? Because there's going to be this psychological transition that starts happening. And don't think that you're not going to have your biggest down day coming very soon. Because what happens with the majority, even good 7-figure traders, is they increase their size, they want to push on, they increase their size in an environment that's now shifting, it becomes less opportunistic. And as they shift their size into a less opportunistic environment, they're increasing the size, they take the hit, they reduce their size. And that just happens with 99% of people. Whereas the counter-cyclical approach is you increase your size, you maintain even more discipline and more filtering out of the right opportunity that you're going to attack aggressively. And a trader that I sat next to, it's my first team that I ever built. You know, the trader, he was 26 at the time, took $50,000, turned it into $25 million in a year. Granted, it was the financial crisis year. So there was those types of P&L expansions. And his ability to increase size and not buckle when he was starting to lose money. And he said, every time I increase my size, I use it as a mechanism for discipline. Because when you get used to one size all the time, you start taking more and more sloppy trades. So you first have to have an edge, right? You first have to have, strategies that you want to deploy in the market in an environment that is dovetailing into your edge. But when you start approaching, you're increasing, you've got a skill set. Most traders, when they have a skill set and they can harvest money out of the markets, they just get used to I'm used to making 1K a day, 5K a day. No, when you start feeling it and seeing it, the best traders who get to 8 figures are aggressive on their sizing. And is it being aggressive? It's being aggressive in the sizing, but it's almost a discipline and a reward to yourself that you deserve. You also have to hack your brain that you deserve to trade this size. And this size is a disciplined process for you to only trade this size on big opportunities, as opposed to you trading the same size, you get sloppy with your size. Yeah.
I mean, that's like almost, and I hope all the viewers are watching that, there was so much, and I say it a lot, but there was so much gold in what you just said there. And getting into the mind, the psyche of almost, again, correct me if I'm wrong, but you're almost like, what was that film? Turning it to 11, right? Get that amplified, turning it to 11 and maintaining it. And we were talking about that trader today as well. We were talking about that. So that's so eye-opening and so important, I think, to take on board through your trading career and as you get there. So moving on to these high performers. Of course, and we touched on it already, you've just come back from the beautiful Bahamas, which is I saw photos and videos. It looked absolutely unreal. And this was a high performers retreat. Okay, well, it wasn't just a little trip, and it was the elite traders, some of the senior traders, all getting together, and of course with a purpose, which I want you to fill us in on. But there was so much in that performance. In that retreat, should I say, including the great professor joined us as well, Mr. Angus Fletcher. So first of all, talk to us about what came about that trip. What was the purpose? What did we achieve? What did the guys achieve? What did they hear? Because I think it would be great for the viewers to hear.
So we have an office that has just opened in Bahamas. So we wanted to baptize it with having a retreat for our very top traders and a select few of our most improved traders. And we have some other. So it's a year-end announcement. We take a core group of traders we took them over to the Bahamas, and we had a special speaker, as you mentioned. He's a person that I've been collaborating for the last 2 years. We'll probably be doing some further collaborations going forward. A professor, Angus Fletcher. He's got an amazing book that's coming out, in August of this year. He was hunted down by the U.S. Special Forces and operating, working with their units on decision making. So he came and he gave training and classroom situations of his work with the U.S. Special Forces adapted for traders. Because one of his things is that he feels there's so much similarities on the emotional responses that people receive from the fear of death and the fear of money and the fear of losing money. And the financial markets is this simulator that triggers multiple emotional responses. So it's just this is great, and he feels this is just this great incubation, this great, almost lab, like, for him being a scientist, a professor, to dissect these responses. And so we took our traders to Bahamas. We had, 3 days of workshops. There was a Miami event in the middle. And whilst we had this retreat, we covered a whole host of frameworks. And the whole purpose of the retreat is to push new boundaries for 2025. What are the things that are working within the group? Where can we pioneer certain approaches? And how can we use peripheral professions, such as the very top US Army personnel, people who are going into critical life and death war zones, that will change the momentum of policies for US governments, and how can we use some of the training that they have there for our traders when they're in that moment having to make a high impactful decision in the markets that will create certain types of performance. So we spoke about many aspects. What is a typical growth formula for a trader, and I might do a separate workshop on this in the future. But we spoke about a project that we're probably going to implement for our top traders next year called Operation Black Swan, where we're going to be hunting down patterns as a group, a select group of individuals that will be participating in this. And Operation Black Swan is finding those trades that have no liquidity constraints that can make you multiple seven figures in a day. So that's one of the aspects we're looking like. How are we going to do that? How are we going to deploy that? And using techniques that the US Special Operations utilize. We also discussed elements of what is it that humans do that no AI intelligence will be able to do.
Yeah.
Okay, and we spoke about the two elements of where, the two parts of brain, him coming from a neuroscientist background, but also a PhD in literature. And so he has this really wonderful, alchemy between the two professions. And that's why he's come up with this, groundbreaking research. And that element of the motor cortex, where creativity emanates from, as opposed to the visual cortex, on the sense-making apparatus of the human, and where the machine, where we'll never compete with machines on logic, but we are far superior on acting on the outlier, whereas the machine discounts the outlier. So we spoke on those elements and the ability to take, I think, the two words that were the most important out of the Bahamas retreat for our traders. And I could see it, when he has this commanding presence. I can imagine speaking in front of some of the most ruthless assassins on the planet. He has to command quite a presence. So with our traders, it probably was a walk in the park for him. But one of the words is that ability to take initiative and violent action.
Yeah.
And so our top traders, whilst they're listening to violent action, especially one of our 8-figure traders, whenever he sees an opportunity, he creates this froth in his gut, and almost in his mouth, that the pain of missing out initiates this ability of him to take violent action on those outlier opportunities. And we've seen a couple of his videos on YouTube of him making 1.3 million on an Iran night. Just got back from a holiday in Tulum. Another night where he recently in the Asymmetrist article on Japan elections. But so the Bahamas retreat just had multiple dimensions, multiple areas that we were focusing from the emotional resilience, skill development, how you develop your ecosystem, your collaborative ecosystem, how you think about that going to 2025, and what are the goals, especially, we have Trump coming in next year, and what those opportunities could potentially present. Right.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, because I only hear stories from the other seniors, the trader, the elite traders, and yourself, about what a time it was when Trump was around last time for traders, and of course, actually we had a taste of it the other night of him just going completely off script, on one of his chats, look at live speeches.
He loves the off script.
Yeah.
And that's what fires the opportunity, right?
Right, exactly. And just like you said, the violent action, when we see that opportunity, the traders, to be able to take it literally by the horns, right? And I think, that performance retreat, I'm sorry I couldn't make it. Someone had to hold the fort together.
You had to hold down the fort in Cyprus. With no Peter in Cyprus, we have no training floor.
Right. Yeah. So, but I mean, such a great idea to get these, the top performers and to put them in a room with Professor Angus Fletcher. And actually, I want to touch on something that we were talking about, and apologies if I misquote the professor. That I remember him on one of the things I've seen, and some of the stuff that we've been looking at recently. He mentions how the AI computers, they can predict or attempt to predict the future, but the human brain can create the future. Right. Yeah. And just hearing that, just kind of go, there's so many. I mean,
I mean, just just on that, remember machines and all, they're learning on data that's already there, right? So these massive super clusters that all these frontier models are, being developed on, whether it's Grok, Gemini, ChatGPT, they're all operating on these huge data sets. Now the data is the fuel, right? For the AI. So it's that petrol. So, but now they're running out of data. So now they have to create this synthetic data. But this data is everything that already exists. And so therefore, when they're predicting the future and they're looking at the future, it's just predicting based on the past. Whereas humans create that new future. And then as a trader, your ability to think causally, you create those new trades.
Amazing. And I mean, we've got a lot to discuss in the future plans with the professor and stuff, so that's going to be really exciting. You did mention, though, throughout this incredible and enlightening performance retreat, there was a Miami diversion.
It was exactly that, a detour.
Of course, it was a time to everyone to also let their head down. Like you said, it's been a year, right? We've had a lot of changes, we've had a lot of things happening. We had Trump, and that preparedness for coming, next year, with so many new things to come, and to be able to unwind and I'm planning to do the same, but with a nice bit of turkey and Yorkshire puddings and gravy, which I'm really looking forward to. I mean, that's incredible. Hopefully we can get some clips at some point as well. I mean, I know there's already been some on social media, and the Bahamas office, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the Miami, although it was slightly to, the guys, having worked incredibly hard during the year, it's one of those moments where they let their hair down, they can dance the night away, and then they can bond on levels that they haven't bonded perhaps all year. And also what comes out of those events, it invigorates them amongst each other. There's that it's when there's that collection of high performing athletes together, relaxed, it stimulates alternative conversations. When you're at your desk every single week, every single day, you don't have that variety of conversations. Because the variance of conversation is very market focused, whereas being in Bahamas, being in Miami, you can have new types of conversations. Just chatting about, conversing about your year, how you're going to be looking forward, the year ahead. And so from that perspective, there was also what also created a lot of competition, of what's expected for the next year. And so the Miami, it's the chats come out, the conversations, and just the good times, which is critical and important.
And I can imagine, like you're saying, that creative kind of collaboration between them all, a little seed might be planted in their head about something, and then
powerful,
and that can just develop and blossom into something completely different, right, throughout the year. So incredible, cool. Let's move on to a little bit about psychology. And that was actually something we were talking about a little bit before, where I remember beforehand, when I was retail trading, I'm trying to trade at home, thinking, this isn't working. Oh, I know what I'll do. I'll read a new psychology book. And I remember being here and one of the senior traders mentioning to me, saying, look, these psychology books are great, and they are great, but you need to have edge first. If you haven't got edge first, then the psychology is very valid, it is very important, but you need to be able to work with something and not having that edge. So let's go into psychology a little bit on this section, and talk about the dangers of a growth mindset. Take it away on that.
So discussing about the dangers of a growth mindset, it's essentially understanding where you are in your journey. And so if you look at this continuous spectrum, or you look at the spectrum, and on the one side you have that pure isolated individual at home trying to work out the market by himself, not willing to learn outside of his own mind, no extension of the mind. And then the other side, the super uber liberal growth mind, digesting everything that's around him. Now, you want a trader that's starting in his career to veer more towards the growth mindset. Okay. Now, once you start gaining and developing an edge, your spectrum, you always want to be, I would say, if there's the middle of, your hybrid of isolated mind, growth mind, so you want to be halfway between the middle and the growth mindset. Now, the problem with when you are on a bad run, say as a senior trader, you lost your form, so you're a bit formless in who you are as a trader, in how you identify yourself as a trader. And all of a sudden, your membrane, you're listening too much, too far. There's no piecemeal engineering. You're actually expanding your ability to listen to 1,000 messages just becomes too wide, and the net becomes too wide. And then what happens there starts becoming confusion. The brain also likes to have one strategic goal. It's something we spoke about in the workshop with Angus Fletcher. But that growth mindset, there's also the prostitution of the growth mindset, is if you are watching 1,000 podcasts, listening to multiple different ways of trading, but none of them you're deeply assimilating and you reflecting deeply on. It's like you're just a shallow observer. You listen, oh, interesting, let me look into that. But instead of taking something that resonates with you, understanding 10 information inputs and taking 2 things that deeply resonate. Because you also have to see where your biological tendencies are of what resonates with you. And so I always suggest, every week for a junior trader, pick, you've acquired as much as 10 to 20 data points from the floor, of opportunity set. Pick 2 of them for the weekend for you to go deeper, because that's now expanding. You're doing depth work instead of wide, shallow work. And then that compounding effect is profound. But now when you're a senior trader and you lose your form, sometimes you actually have to auto-correct if you're on this, I'm listening to, so many people, so much about speaking to the performance coach, speaking to the risk manager coach, that you have to auto-correct and a little bit go back into yourself. So there's never a golden ratio or a golden solution or a holy grail for, whenever you become a fundamentalist on any side, you start becoming unbalanced. But there's times of how you oscillate, and that's a skill of when you oscillate. Now, if you're an isolated mind forever, you'll eventually disintegrate into nothing. Your edge will become expired, you become expired, your research and development department becomes thin, and then you disintegrate. But you can also disintegrate when you lose yourself because you're listening to all these messages, but you're not processing them deeply. So how do you work? And so that what we mean by the dangers of a hyper growth mindset. A powerful growth mindset is the ability to take 10 data points, 2 that resonate with you, go deep into them, understand them, move on. As opposed to someone, or what happens to a lot of traders, they get these 15 data points, they focus on 1 for the day, then the next, they focus on 2 the other day, and then they just are on this walkabout in the market where they can be lost, and they can be lost for extended, or another walkabout, they're doing multiple courses. Find the right team that resonates with you, where those edges resonate with you, where it makes sense. But part of your life as a journey, developing as a trader, the beginning parts of your career is doing a lot of training that might not, it's just your journey, right? You do what was a great course now, 5 years later saying, actually, even though it was a crap course, it sent me on my journey because I was curious in the path.
And I mean, just going back to what you're saying about the data points, that was something that I remember I found myself doing. And I want to ask you a question. I mean, how important is it to, again, I think is also, apart from the red Christmas theme, the showing up factor, right? How important is it to, and we've had multiple discussions on this, is it to come in on a weekend, like where your mind is in a completely different space? How important is something like that to be able to really kind of disengage from the noise of the day and to really kind of broaden your aspect?
Yeah, the mechanics of your mind is substantially different, and the way your mind operates and solves problems when it's detached from the market during the week than on the weekend is substantially, it's a different machinery. And so that weekend operation, if you create a powerful framework, and we speak about this on our blueprint coaching program, and I have a couple of workshops there. is how you organize your weekend work is some of the most profound. And one of our top profile traders, an 8-figure trader, his edge is how he organizes his weekend review of the past week, and what inputs he's taken from the past week, that he's in a stress test on the weekend in a different mind state. Because I've mentioned this multiple times, and probably people are tired of me hearing this, is when you detach from the markets on the weekend, you've had a good sleep, you've woken up, you've gone for a little run, a swim in the sea here in Cyprus or in Bahamas, you get to your desk, you're in a more relaxed manner. When you're more relaxed, you're more creative. When you're more creative, your problem-solving skills are significantly higher. And so all of a sudden, the trades and plays that you observe during the week, you just see them in a whole different light. And that's where the compounding happens. For me, the weekend activity is profoundly important. I say, you should devote a minimum and a max of around 3 hours. You don't want to overstretch yourself, because you also want to rejuvenate your psychology on the weekend and your physiology. And so that weekend work, you're operating with a different machinery, and that machinery has different purposes and different objectives. So the traders who don't use that space on the weekend do struggle to accelerate their development. But you also need to know how to structure your weekend infrastructure.
Yeah. And speaking on a similar kind of topic, and again, something that we've been discussing, and actually something I was discussing with another one of the traders today, how the generation is different now. The younger kids, like my kids, they want to watch, I don't know, Ben and Holly or whatever it is. They know, hit the Netflix button and it's there. Oh no, I'm bored of that. I want the next thing. And I think there's too much of this whole on-demand culture that we're kind of like in between in. I might be wrong in my thinking, but it's how I kind of see it. So, we kind of grew up with, using TV as an example, had to watch whatever my parents wanted to watch during the daytime, just so I could watch Gladiators in the afternoon, right? And
now today you just watch Gladiators when you want to watch it.
Yeah, because you've got it, right? And I think I see a lot of that with trading, with some of the traders who've come, who, they've learned the latest new fad, on YouTube or new strategy. And as you said, strategies come and go. And that was such a profound thing that you said on that last conversation. And it's, how difficult is it to kind of navigate that? Because it's a very different world now with, the youngsters coming up. And are they in that kind of in between mode? How can you kind of hit home to these youngsters that, there is that grind, there is that, you've got to kind of stick through it. And how is it going to be in 10, 15 years?
Yeah, it's something I ask myself every year, just seeing 20 years of new traders coming in on a yearly basis, majority drop out. It's a tough gig. It's been tough back then. It's tough today. It's even tougher today. But I think what's going to be the most challenging part for this newer generation of trader, and Angus Fletcher spoke about it with his work with the US Special Forces, them being able to recruit this new generation of US Special Forces is becoming more challenging because of the schooling system. And the schooling system, how they're just training them on their logical brain. You can outsource that, to the computers. And so you're training these people that are not anti-fragile, and therefore they don't know how to pivot when something changes in an instance. And all of a sudden there's that shock factor of, I need stability in my life. I need to know what happens in my next step forward, as opposed to, operating in chaos and operating in variance, and which our forefathers had to do all the time, even more so our ancient forefathers. And so that ability to be anti-fragile, operating in volatility, operating in chaos, how you train that, it's one of the main aspects of the workshops that we had in Bahamas. But what I suppose happening is some of the subliminal psychology that's being trained when you're on a phone and you are just scrolling. You're not receiving any friction of what you want. Yeah. But life has friction, right? Yeah. Life has friction, so your emotional responses is much more severe in reality when you're dealing with someone, or you're at your trading desk and all of a sudden you feel, oh man, maybe trading's not for me. Because the first moment you deal with friction, you feel this isn't for you. And so your ability to deal with friction, instead of like sticking through and saying, okay, dealt with the friction, what's this telling me about myself? How am I interpreting this emotional response? You know, emotional responses, you know, we're speaking about this on a training webinar this week, is emotional responses, you know, also as Angus Fletcher mentions, are these ancient mechanisms or signal systems for us to grow from if we know how to listen to them and what they're telling us. But majority of us, we ignore it, we receive the information, we get emotionally distraught, and you know, we hate everyone and anything, you know, around us. But that ability to deal with friction becomes less and less so apparent when you're receiving these constant dopamine hits. You know, so you can get whatever material, whatever you want, whereas when you're a youngster, you had to wait 10 hours to watch your Superman.
Yeah.
Okay, so you had to be patient for that. And then you were, you know,
you get rewarded.
Yeah, you get reward. Now you can get that Superman in that moment. So that's ability. And so then people also asking themselves, like, are shallow touching every single profession. Okay, this isn't for me, let me try this. And the moment they receive friction in their job, in their career, and trading, you receive friction consistently. People don't know how to deal with that. So we have to find those people who have dealt with friction, how they overcome friction. And because friction is becoming less and less so, and that's why people are, I imagine, you know, a modern generation, it's harder for them to kind of be focused on that one thing that they're passionate about, because they feel with friction, it's not your passion, because passion should not have friction.
Yeah. And this is, I mean, this is into the segment that I wanted to talk about, which is, you know, finding new traders or having new traders get started in their career. And as you said many times, it's very easy at the beginning to be excited and it's coming, but it's how do you adjust with that friction? And it's almost like, I've heard you mention it many times as well, is cutting the fat. You know, sometimes, you know, something doesn't go their way or doesn't happen the way they like it, and they're just, you know, they can't take it, and they look for the next thing. What's something that you would recommend or advise? Let's say somebody's on our floor now, you know, who's been here for a month, 6 months, even close to a year. What's something that you would suggest to that person to really kind of cut through and to take their career onto the next level?
Yeah, I think on a floor it's easy, because on a floor, if you can see and have the discussions with, you know, the traders on the first floor, of seeing them showing up, sharing the common stories. I think stories, you know, stories are a linking of action. Stories create this change. And that's what the launch of the Asymmetrist is all about. And that ability to share stories of traders and understand the path that they took and understand the emotional friction that you'll receive along the way will empower you to embark in your own journey. You know, and so engage in those conversations, engage in those stories, because then you know that you're on the same path that they were maybe 3-4 years ago. And now you can see there are traders who are making $10,000, $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 days.
Yeah.
And more. And so engaging in that stories creates this fire, because humans, that's how we moved. It's, you know, literature was probably one of the greatest transformational technologies that man ever invented, right? Literature, story is what gets us to move. And so, you know, that's part of my responsibility, is to broker those stories, you know, across the trading floor. It's also why we started the Asymmetrist, is to share what's happening from the stories of the floor. But when a trader is just not listening to the stories, not seeing what is performing well, as a firm, it costs us money to have a trader on desk. We have to cut them, and we have to make a decision. Now we err on the side of giving traders multiple levels of support, but it still needs to come back from them. And if they can't show that, then that's when we have to make those decisions.
Yeah, because it is. I mean, at the end of the day, it's an industry and it's a career and it's something that it's, in my opinion, all or nothing. There can't be, I can cruise along and figure it out. No, you've got to really grind. You've got to really, be there and show up.
Absolutely.
You mentioned the Asymmetrist as well. I think I want to kind of close on that. It's something that's really exciting. It's something that it gives me a break from my day of sometimes havoc, and how things are going. It's so well written, it's so well structured. Of course, there's things that have been talked about that are happening on the floor that I'm sitting on, or have happened. And I mean, can you just tell us about the concept of the Asymmetrist? What is there to expect going forward? It's such a great new addition to AXIA.
Yeah, again, just the power of story, but doing it from almost ground zero, where we effectively have a resident writer, a reporter from the ground, sharing all the emotions, performances, the challenges, and to invigorate people with the stories that are happening on the trading form in a different, in a long form content.
Yeah.
I think it's a unique medium that is not being explored anywhere, on the planet, to have a resident writer on the trading floor. And so that's what we want to share with the community for those who do feel on their own, who want to know what's happening with traders. And we felt, it's very hard for us to get a camera in front of a trader to interview. Our traders don't like to get interviewed. They like to keep a low profile. So it's the next best thing that we can offer the community of getting first-hand experience from the trader's eyes. And I think it's rather unique and just a powerful instigator of change within when you read that story, and hopefully an empowerment of also what's possible. We want our industry to thrive. The London prop industry has been collapsing over the last few years. We want that to rise. Now, whether it's us, other competition, we want it, because the more traders, it's an incredible pursuit, the art of speculation, the art and the science of speculation. And hopefully through the Asymmetrist, we'll get more people invigorated. And we'll share days when we've lost a lot of money as well, like we spoke about. The blood on the trading floor on that red Christmas day. And so that's from my perspective what the Asymmetrist is about.
Yeah, and I mean, again, as I mentioned it at the beginning, these conversations are all about being frank, giving people the insights of what's been going on, the themes of the week, how people are reacting to it, and all the stuff in between. But there's something comforting for me, because it's something that I think we're losing a lot of, which is just reading. And for me, when I read that, apart from the fact that, I mean, he writes incredibly well. The language that he uses is so well put together, and it stems like a whole new creativity in your brain once you've read it, because you're almost, you're there. It immerses you. It brings you in, and I think it's just so creative in that point of view. I think it's so good for the mind, and like you said, for people to be able to get a chance to feel, the feelings of the floor, on the good days, on the bad days, the flat days, and everything in between. So I'm really looking forward to that. And how often does that?
It's they publish. Bogdan publishes articles between 2 to 4 times a month. There'll be some long forms coming out in January with big trader interviews. So keep an eye out for that. So just the best way, it's all free. So you just need to put your email down, subscribe. Because you also get in that you get a nice little email into your inbox of content that you actually don't see in the Asymmetrist. So it's just worth it. And that's looking forward to the year of 2025. I think we're going to have many stories with the return of Trump.
Yeah, excellent. Well, on that note, everybody, thank you so much for watching. Hope you've enjoyed this second episode. Alex, again, thank you so much for the time.
No, thank you. I really enjoyed it, Peter.
It's been great. And if you want to learn more about the Asymmetrist, we're going to have the link down below. Of course, if you want to find out more about our trading floors, if you want to join the webinar, which you said the next webinar is going to be about, what was that again?
We have webinars, once a month, but you can go on our webpage. There's a green button that you can join your details, and you'll get into the world of how we develop our traders.
And it's not just a one-way street.
I think there's a link down below as well.
So the link's down below. If you're interested in coming out to seeing us in Cyprus or London, or now the Bahamas, as we've been speaking about as well, just get in touch and we can sort that out. And I think that's it for us for this year. Merry Christmas to everybody. Thank you so much for sticking with us. Thank you, Alex, for everything here.
No, thanks, Peter. I mean, and just one last, it was really, I've really actually enjoyed doing these. I haven't really been on our YouTube channel for maybe on a consistent basis for the last 8 years or 9 years. And so from my side, what I'd love to see, we're going to try our very hardest to keep these sessions up in 2025, is any part of today's conversation that, whether it's from sizing, whether it's with regards to your psychology of, improving your game, any day this week or the past week that you've struggled, that you've had, a big red, down day, what was your emotional response? Or any elements of today's discussion that you'd like to hear more about, let us know in the chat, because we look at that chat. We engage with that chat. If there's anything that you'd like us to discuss, in the chats going forward, just put it all down in the chat, and myself and Peter, we'd love to just explore your journey in 2025.
Yeah, and assist in that. And just like this is a conversation, we want that conversation to carry on through that. Excellent. Well, Merry Christmas. Happy New Year, and we'll see you in the next one.
Yes, thank you, Peter.
Thank
Cheers.
you.